Hello everyone, Cienter here. Welcome to the Ritualist part of my Guild Wars 1 skill review project, and this will be an introduction. There are a number of specific mechanics to the Ritualist that we need to go over. So, there's basically three major mechanics. The first one is spirits, specifically binding rituals. So there's a couple different types of binding rituals. They're all binding rituals, but there's basically two broad categories of them. There are attacking spirits, and then there are passive spirits that have some sort of passive effect. We'll go over those in just a moment. There are also weapon spells, so they have this icon that's basically like a sword with a greenish burst around it. And then there are item spells. So one of the things that's important about these is that a bunch of them are actually like mutually exclusive. So let's start with spirits. So attacking spirits look like this, and they just auto attack things. Right? That's what they do. They auto attack. Now, the damage that they deal is armor ignoring. So you see that this is rated for 27 damage. That's the 60 suit of armor spirit. So it would take 27 damage, but it'll also deal 27 damage to the 81 once this one is taken out. Now, you can only have one of a given spirit at a time. So this is a spirit of pain. If I want to use this skill again, that one's going to die because I can only have them so close. So that's an important restriction. You can, like, if they're spaced far enough, you can have two, like, spirits of pain, but they have to have enough distance between them. And it's a pretty sizable area. So, like, this was true about nature rituals as well for the ranger, but it's more relevant for the ritualist just because there's more benefits to having multiple of these attacking spirits up. Now, there's another example of the sort of passive spirit. They have this appearance. So these guys, the attacking spirits, have this sort of angry sort of thing. These guys tend to be bounded up like that. I have this effect now on me. This effect applies some benefits while I'm holding an item. So let's go ahead and talk about that next. So right here I have two item spells. I have Mighty Was Vorizon, or as people like to call it, Mighty Was Verizon. And this one gives you stuff. So I'm going to activate this. While I'm holding it, you can see it's a bundle item that my character is holding now. This is a held item. You do not get access to your weapon while you're holding an item spell. And some sort of effect happens. So in this case, I get plus 15 armor and plus 30 maximum energy. So you can see I have 70 energy right now. Part of that's because Empowerment is giving me plus 10. So Empowerment dies, wears off, I lose some energy. I can raise another one. Now you can only hold one item at a time. So if I want to use Generous Was Tsungrai, which gives me additional maximum health, I can use that, and now I'm holding those ashes. But if I use Mighty Was Vorizon again, I'm going to have to drop Sungrai. You can also just drop it through the normal means of using like the drop button or swapping to a weapon. So that's how item spells work. But like I said, you can only have one active at a time. So when you're making a build, it's unlikely that you're going to want multiple. And when you apply a new one, the old one will go away. That's actually very similar for weapon spells. So here I have Vital Weapon. You can see my maximum HP increased yet again. So Vital Weapon gives me plus 157 HP. If I apply Spirit Weapon to myself, Vital Weapon's going to be replaced by that. So you can only have one weapon spell active at a time. There is no natural way, however, to remove a weapon spell. Once the buff is applied, it's there until its duration expires. They're always buffs. They're similar to enchantments in that regard. They also, if I drop that and then apply a weapon buff to myself, they change the appearance of your weapon. So the idea is that, I don't know, your weapon is possessed with a spirit or something. I'm not quite sure what the idea is, but each weapon has a different appearance when it's affected by a weapon spell. I have a couple of different ones on this character, so you can see there's a bunch of different appearances. But that's the idea of a weapon spell. Now, additionally, there is a bunch of skills that care about spirits in some way. So, for example, Spirit Light is a healing spell. And this is like one class where there's an effect if there are spirits near you. So if there are any spirits within earshot, you don't sacrifice health. So normally this is a 17% health sacrifice, but because there's a spirit in earshot, I don't have to sacrifice any HP. This one, on the other hand, draws from your spirits. So spirit transfer heals me, but takes HP from my spirit. And there's some other skills that do things with spirits as well. So just kind of be aware of that. Also, it should be said that spirits are immune to all conditions except for burning. They can be burned, but other conditions do not affect them. And there's a lot of things that say non-spirit and things like that. So, for example, if I select the Spirit of Empowerment, I cannot apply a vital weapon to it. You can't enchant it or anything like that. And that dies. And now if I use... let's target this guy. If I use this, I will sacrifice 17% max HP. There are... that's one of the other mechanics that you'll find in here. Ritualists have health sacrifice like Necromancer does. It's not as common as Necromancer, but it is something that comes up. So now that we've gone over kind of the mechanical basics, let's go ahead and talk about the attribute lines. So we have 4. Communing is the first one alphabetically. So communing gives you it doesn't have any inherent effect, and it has a lot of the spirits in it. So there's a bunch of different spirits in communing, some stuff relating to spirits. That's kind of what it's about. It's about raising spirits. Then there's restoration magic, which is an attribute line full of healing and defensive skills. So, for example, the weapon spells in here tend to be more defensive in nature, more healing in nature, very similar to some of the monk protection prayers or healing prayers. There's a bunch of skills that are about healing. There's some spirits in here that are about healing. So, for example, recuperation gives life regeneration. And Spirit Light is a healing spell that's in here. So this attribute line is all about that sort of stuff. Then there's channeling magic. Channeling magic is more of offensive spells. The idea behind it is that what you have going on here is stuff where you're attacking the opponent. And there's a couple more offensively oriented spirits. I'm not quite sure why Bloodsong's in here, but we'll talk about that later. So this attribute line has weapon spells that tend to be more offensive or disruptive, things like Splinter Weapon or Warmonger's Weapon that deal damage and interrupt enemies, things like that. And there's a few other like random odds and ends in there. And then there's Spawning Power. So Spawning Power is the primary attribute. And so there's a couple things about it. So first of all, for each rank of Spawning Power, you have creatures you create or animate have 4% more health. So that will affect your spirits that you summon. So, for example, the Spirit of Empowerment will have more HP 4% more HP for each point that I have in Spawning Power. But it also applies to Necromancer minions. So if I had a bunch of death magic, then I could animate minions, and those minions would have more maximum HP. So while you can't like, Necromancers, because they can get more death magic, can make higher level minions. Spawning Power allows you to kind of get at least tankier relative to the level minions. So that's something that's a cool benefit. And also, your weapon spells that you cast will last 4% longer. So there's also a few random odds and ends, things that are related to creating spirits, things that kind of want to be in primary attributes, like Sight Beyond Sight. So there are a few specific things in Spawning Power that are kind of in that area as well. But anyway, it also makes your weapon spells last longer. So enchantments can have their duration increased through primarily the enchanting mod on weapons. So for example, Drachner's Reaper makes your enchantments last 20% longer. Enchanting is not, or there's not an enchanting equivalent for weapon spells, but Spawning Power kind of plays that role. So with 12 Spawning Power here, my weapon spells, such as Spirit Light Weapon, this, instead of lasting 10 seconds, is going to end up lasting on me closer to 15 seconds. So, that's, I guess, kind of the overview of these things. So let's go ahead and jump back to the guild hall so I can talk about the insignia a little bit. The other sort of thing about the Ritualist is it does a really good sort of job of kind of playing hybrid roles. It's not as good at healing as a monk can be. It's not as good at certain, like, it's not as offensively powerful as like a mesmer or an elementalist can potentially be, but it just does a nice job of kind of sitting in the sort of areas. It has a lot of versatility, Restoration Magic, for example, kind of combines similar effects to protection prayers and healing prayers in one attribute line, so there's some nice things that way. And it has a very positional playstyle with creating spirits to kind of take areas. I typically like to bring one because of some of its ability to heal and support and things like that. So we'll go over that in more detail when we go over individual skills. Nothing special in the runes themselves. The insignia, there's the Shaman's Insignia, which gives you more armor for the number of spirits you control. So if you control 3 spirits, you get plus 15 armor, 10 armor if you control 2, or 5 armor if you control 1. It's also very popular because of a certain elite in channeling magic that we will get to. Then there's Ghostforged Insignia, which just gives you raw 15 armor while you're affected by a weapon spell. I actually have a set of Ghostforged armor on this character that I will use if I am specifically doing some sort of build where I'm going to be applying weapon spells myself a lot. And then there's Mystic Insignia, which gives you plus 15 armor while activating skills. This is more relevant in PvP. One of the things that's really important here is you'll notice that Pain has a PvP version, and it has a 3-second activation. Whereas if I go into an area that is not using PvP skills, like the Great Temple of Balthazar, you'll notice that Pain has a 3/4 second activation. So this is going to be true of all of the spirits. The PvP versions just have the full-length activation time of like 3 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever. They have longer activation times, whereas the PvE versions activate much more quickly, and that's just to make them a lot more usable in PvE. I wish they'd done the same thing for nature rituals for rangers, that they made the PvE versions have quicker activations, but anyway, that is what it is. So that's going to go ahead and, I guess, sum up most of the important things that I can think of about Ritualist. Just keep in mind that its general playstyle in a party can be a little bit variant. It can move more towards the healing side. It can move more towards sort of the support area, or can move more towards the offensive area. And it does a really good job of kind of like holding multiple sort of roles together at the same time. Like my common sort of build of it is going to have a lot of good offense through some powerful channeling magic spells, but also use restoration magic to support the party some as well with heals that are pretty strong. The other thing that's really important about restoration magic in particular that I want to call out is a lot of the skills are balanced to be a little bit stronger on average than monk spells on their surface. So, for example, I have 11 restoration magic right now, and Spirit Light is healing for 148 HP, which is very, very strong if you remember back to any of the monk things. To get that sort of heal is going to require a pretty hefty, it's going to require a lot of energy to be able to do that. That's what I'm getting for. So if I were to bring up Takora, who's probably got healing prayers, so her healing prayers, like I'm using an elite that heals for 120 on her at 11, and heal other like 80 is pretty good. Where's heal other? It is right here. This is 141. Heal other is not even healing for as much as Spirit Light. The reason for this, and the reason why Restoration Prayers tends to heal for more on average than Healing Prayers does, Restoration Magic, I should say, is because there's no Divine Favor. So all of the monk healing stuff has Divine Favor taken into account. Remember, this is increasing the amount of healing by about 32. With 10 Divine Favor, that's an additional 32 healing. So with that, the monk healing of, say, if we look back at Heal Other, that 141 becomes 173 for a monk. What this means is that if you're healing as a secondary, Ritualist Restoration Magic is probably better to use as an attribute line for healing than going into monk healing prayers and stuff like that. So that's just something that's useful to keep in mind, that some of the balancing is a little bit different, and that can kind of play with things a little bit differently. So anyway, I wanted to bring up some of those details. The other thing that I should point out is that Ritualist has some resurrection spells, which most professions do not have the ability to, or do not have any resurrection spells native to their profession, but there are a couple that the Ritualist has. So we'll get to those in due time. But that's another thing that can make Secondary Ritualist useful, is you get access to a couple of resurrection spells. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video, and next time we will start with channeling magic, because it is the first. It's alphabetically. So until then, everyone, take care, and goodbye. I should have waved earlier, but here we are. Goodbye.